Hola amigos, aquí de vuelta con ustedes. Today we are chatting, my husband Marco and I, and answering a question that we get a lot. And it's come up a few times in our channel, and it's also come up a lot in our normal lives. So we thought it would be a good question to address here with you all, and that is why we want to move to Mexico. What is the reasoning behind us doing that? And give you a little bit of our background history and answer that question. But first, I did want to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the channel. It has gotten a little bit of a growth spurt since the last couple of videos that I posted. And it has been really, really exciting for us, especially because I'm not a videographer by any means. I do not have any experience with video editing. This is my first YouTube channel ever. So for somebody as, new to this as me, and for somebody who's just figuring it out as they go, this is really, really cool. So I just wanted to say thank you, and especially to all of you in the comments who have shared your stories with us, because that has been extra special. Those of you who also want to return to Mexico, have family back in Mexico, are wanting to build a home, so on and so forth. It has been really, really cool and amazing to hear from you all, and just know that our story is connecting with folks. So thank you. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do so, and help keep this going. I think this question of why we want to move to Mexico sometimes comes from a place of having kind of bought into this ongoing narrative that Mexico is like this dangerous third world country, but we've honestly never had any really bad experiences, and we've always felt so safe, and you are very lucky to be from a place that is safe, because of course there are dangerous areas in Mexico. Yeah. There are. And there are places where you shouldn't be going out at night, and there's places where you shouldn't be going if you're not a local. But, I would counter that to say there are places in the United States where you shouldn't be going out at night, and where you shouldn't be going if you're not a local. I've been asked before, aren't you scared to go to Mexico right now? Weren't there these, crimes, I won't say the word, but crimes happening, in this area over here and on the other side of the country. But that wouldn't deter you from going anywhere else in the United States. Like, if there were crimes happening in LA, it doesn't mean I'm not going to be in Oregon, right? Yeah. So I think this, there's these splashy headlines that get thrown around a lot, and that a lot of people buy into. But my advice, like, for those wanting to return to Mexico, is to talk to like your family there. If you have family, talk to the local people, get stories from real people. And if it's, yes, they are struggling with violence in that area, or high crime, and it's, really sketchy place for them, then yeah, that's not going to be a good place to invest or return. But I really would not give a lot of credit to the headlines in the news.
No, there's a lot of AI fake. Mm-hmm. They exaggerate. Oh my gosh, it's unreal. So we got to be careful of what you see in TV.
Marco, he is from Michoacan. So he grew up in this pueblo that we built our house in. And when we met and got together, you already had those plans, right?
Yes, I already had those plans to move over there, and really excited about it. But then I met Carmen, and I kind of made my decision a little bit stronger. Now that she also wanted to move to Mexico someday, but me wanting to go to Mexico and her idea made it stronger to both of us fall through.
Mm-hmm. You already had that background, that lifestyle of growing up with cattle with on your dad's farm, and that living that rural lifestyle and helping your dad with his cattle ranch, you and all your brothers, because you have two brothers and a sister. But so you know, really wanted to return to that lifestyle, right?
Yes, I always loved that lifestyle, and I was trying to find a way how can I go back to that lifestyle. So now I'm at the point that I don't need to work as hard as I did before. My kids are grown up. We still have a little one, but I would like to have him to grow up kind of like I did, so he has the field of what is to grow up on a farm or a village.
Yep. And I have that experience too. That's why when we met and you were kind of, you know, you told me was your plans and you wanted to go back to this rural area of Mexico to live, and that didn't scare me at all because I also grew up like that. You know, I grew up with acreage and, you know, always had horses and animals and lots of space to run around, and those were my fondest memories as a child, is growing up in the rural areas of the Pacific Northwest. So for me, like returning to that life was always a dream of mine as well. And furthermore, it didn't scare me because, you know, of being Mexican, and though I'm mixed, obviously, but, you know, the thought of going to Mexico with Marco really didn't scare me at all because of my family history, and that's my yo tengo herencia mexicana también. So
That's right.
I always felt this pull towards Mexico, and that at some point, probably one day, I'd end up there. You know, I really studied Spanish hard, even though I didn't speak it growing up. I wanted to reclaim the language for myself and learned Spanish, and always wanted to learn more about my Mexican heritage. So for me, it was kind of like this perfect fit for us, that I would love to dive into that life, the you know, from a growing up in a rural lifestyle, but also having Mexican heritage, and him wanting to return to that. It was kind of a perfect mix for us.
For sure. Since I already had some property over there, it was a little bit easier. But actually, we were planning to build on one of the properties that I had over there, but it was a little bit closer to the freeway, so it wasn't that convenient.
It wasn't as good of a place for a home, but we were still gung ho on the idea of doing it, and in whatever way, shape, or form that looked like.
Yeah.
But then we got the opportunity in 2021 to purchase another property along with your brother.
Yes, which it was a lot closer to the beach, away from town a little bit, and it was a lot more appropriate to have a nicer life away from the neighborhood, not too far, not too close. A place that you can have chickens, some animals, cows.
And so, you always knowing that you were going to return to your hometown in Mexico one day, what were your plans as far as making a living there? Because you have worked so hard in the United States to, you know, build this career and this expertise in your career field there. What were your plans to do in Mexico when you returned?
Well, first, when I was thinking about returning to Mexico, it was obviously, opening up a business, what I do. But
Similar to your family, because your mom does that.
yes.
Your mom has a little hotel on the beach, and so does your brother, and so does your other brother. Actually, both brothers do.
Yeah, both brothers. So it's been a approved business that you can make a living. You don't get rich, but you can survive, have all your needs. Um, it is not a stressful job or business. Um, so that's kind of what we're aiming to. Um, and I think before I was going to try to do it myself, something smaller, but now together, it'll be a little bit easier. Especially that, she's good with the computer. I'm good at fixing stuff, plumbing, electrical, you name it, anything that it's hands on. I'm not so bad. So that makes it
Not bad at
easier.
all.
Yeah. So, and it's fun. I enjoy what I do. The only thing I also like, whatever you need to do without being on a schedule or have somebody telling you when you start and when you have to finish.
To have our own business, I think that's the point we're trying to make here. Is like in the United States, we have to be on the United States pace, like that pace of life. It is so stressful, and poor Marco wakes up at 4:30 every morning to go to work and works his 8, sometimes 10 hours, comes home, and I'm doing the same because we both work full time and we have a little one, and those 2 days on the weekends that we get for rest is like just consumed by errands and running around and grabbing groceries and going to family events, and so it's just like it's so fast paced and it's so stressful. But in Mexico, you don't have to hustle as hard to make a decent living. If you have a business, which by the way, another point I think that's important to state here is the barriers to entry for business ownership are so much more reasonable in Mexico. Like if you have your own home, you can sell fruta picada out the front door, and you're perfectly legit. Yes, in the urban areas, maybe you need some licenses and business permits and things, but it's so much more reasonable for people to get going in a business of their own, and so much less overhead, like Marco
A
mentioned,
lot less.
to be able to live comfortably. So that's kind of what we want to transition to as well. And like we said, Marco's family, his parents, his siblings already have businesses in the pueblo that they live in, and like we want to follow suit because we see what rewarding and satisfying and relaxed, like tranquilo, like life that they have. And because it's not this grind, hustle to try to cover all of your overhead and all your expenses. And of course, we're lucky that we own land there, and we're able to build a home that we don't have debt wrapped up in that. We're not behind in Mexico. United States, in order to get ahead, you're inherently put behind, because if you want to get an education, I mean, unless you have a lot of money, if you want to get an education, you're going to have to take on debt. If you want to buy a home, you're going to have to take on debt. If you want to start a business, you're going to have to take on debt, and that is inherently putting you behind because you owe that money. So in Mexico, society is less
Overhead.
fueled on debt, and it's just so much more reasonable to get ahead and to live a decent life without having to hustle. So that's something that's so attractive about moving back
To Mexico.
to Mexico.
And again, you don't have to have this fancy or big, huge hotel. Like my family doesn't have a fancy or huge hotel.
They're more like in the United States, it's more what is called a motel, like a very small, just a dozen or so units.
Yeah.
So it's nothing like a Hilton or Best Western or anything like that. No, these are like little hotelitos.
Yeah, but you can make a living pretty good. Nothing fancy. You do the math. Well, I done the math. My wife. Um, you're spending almost 70% of overhead to keep the lights on a home. Over there, it's the other way. Maybe it's 30% overhead. That's one of the things that we're like, okay, you don't make as much money over there, but you spend a lot less, like more than half. So that means that you don't have that pressure, that stress to make all that money to have the life that you can have over there.
Yeah.
We're so positive of doing things right now versus if you wait till you're older, then that positivity can go down quite a bit. So
And
right
that
now,
motivation.
your motivation's, 90%. So that's why we're so excited of finishing what we started.
Our next step
we started, right?
is to build the business.
Yeah, now we
Something
just
that
gotta
can
focus.
just generate some income for us
Yeah.
when we move there permanently.
And again, we have if we're going to try to make that business, but I have other abilities that I can do to come up with money too.
Right.
It can be cattle.
If for some reason we couldn't build the business, if things kind of went sideways with our finances and we couldn't pull it off, like I have no doubt that Marco's skills would be put to use very well.
Oh,
and he could do so many different things. You have countless of opportunities down there to do
Lots.
things. Yeah.
I mean, it's impressive how they actually let you work and do stuff. I don't want to talk about United States, but they have so many laws and licenses that they required to be able to do anything. You're spending $5,000 before you start anything. Over there, that $5,000 is going towards the project that you want to do.
Another aspect that I want to touch on of, that's a factor in us moving there that is, at least for me, is the healthier lifestyle, because we have noticed that, the times that we spend at our home in Michoacan or visiting family, like we are so much more active. And I think the weather plays into that. Just, having more opportunity to be able to work outside. Whereas in Oregon, we are a little bit more dependent on if it's decent weather to go out and do things and enjoy the outdoors. Not saying that you can't go enjoy the outdoors while it's raining, but it's not as enjoyable, right? So I noticed that I personally am a lot more active when we are there, and we have a lot more like ganas to like work outside, and
we have long daylight.
More daylight to work with, and of course, just being at our location, which is on the beach, that gives us endless activities to do with our son, and then being near the farm, his dad's farm, to go, get together with family and have carne asada, or, work with the cows and, or get eggs. I mean, and that's another point. All of our food, a lot of it
chickens.
is totally like the truest form of organic. I'm not saying like it's slapped with a label organic. It is truly organic, because the eggs we get come from my suegro's farm. The meat we get a lot of times comes from my suegro's farm. The fruit that we get comes from my suegro's farm, or other people's surrounding farms, because they share with each other. It's just like, who's touched your food, what's been put in it, what's in the soil. And so that just like, that is so nice. And, I think it forces you to deal with a little bit of inconvenience, which I think is healthy for us. And I think in the United States, we see so much convenience, like an overabundance of convenience. Like I saw the other day, like hard-boiled eggs are already cooked and peeled, like out of the shell and packaged in plastic for you to buy at the grocery store. And it's like, I feel like people are losing this ability to work with their own food, and or like the practice of boiling an egg and knowing exactly how much time and the method of boiling an egg and peeling it. So for me, I like it, maintaining a little bit of challenge in our daily lives so that I don't lose practice of how to make our own foods, because I think, in more Western cultures where there's this overabundance of convenience, I worry that a lot of people would not know how to feed themselves should a catastrophe happen to our industrial manufactured food complex that we have in the United States. So I like being in touch with that side of life and providing for our family and feeding our family, and just starting with raw materials. And there's more need to do that in our rural area that we live in, Michoacan, because we don't have all the conveniences there. We don't have grocery stores nearby. We don't have fast food nearby where if you don't feel like cooking, you can just go down the street and get Chipotle or something. Yeah. So even though it is tougher, I think it's better in the long run for us. And another thing is, I noticed that children are so much more incorporated into everyday life in rural Mexico, maybe not so much in the urban areas where like in professional settings, but I notice that people bring their kids and their babies to work a lot. When you are visiting like little tienditas around the area, the women there working are bringing their babies, like they have their baby in a bouncer like next to the cash register, or people working on construction sites bring their little boys with them to help and start learning skills on a construction site. And yeah, it's dangerous when we think about it from like OSHA standards or like United States standards, but I think it's a really interesting side of the culture there that children are so incorporated into everyday life. And like I feel like our son is so accepted everywhere we go, like it just, you get nice. This feeling like everybody is helping you watch out for your kid, and like everybody has your back as a parent. In Mexico, they practice Dia de los Niños, right? Yeah, they even have a whole holiday for kids. And so you just get this feeling as you're moving through life every day there that like children are so accepted and so welcomed and so cherished. And whereas in the United States there's more and more spaces where you get the feeling that children are not as welcome, like a lot of restaurants, a lot of obviously a lot of places of business, and a lot of events. More and more I'm seeing, so that's another aspect of Mexico that's different, but that's a positive for me. And though I don't want, necessarily like a little kid running around on a construction site by any means, but it is a positive experience for them as long as it's like a safe experience.
Talking about that construction and having kids there, it's dangerous, but at the same time it's not. It's something that you start early to learn how things work and how to be cautious around a construction, and you start learning what a tool is.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's the really positive side of it that I like, and even maybe even if it's unskilled work, but you still see kids, like little kids, 8 years old, going around selling their mom's flan that his mom made in little cups, and selling those around to people down the street, or like in the restaurants or on the beach, or going around selling like bolsas de limones or, door to door. And yeah, sometimes it's out of necessity because the family needs more income and the family needs all hands on deck
But
to generate income.
sometimes we think those little kids are barely scraping by. But sometimes it's not the case. They're doing pretty good on their little business. Like the guacaleros, you see them selling hammocks, little decoration things. But every single one has, almost the ones I know, they own their own house and they have a nice truck. So they're not like scraping by. They have a good life. So yeah, when we're vacationing and we see people like that selling their flan and hammocks and like that, they're not having a hard life. They're doing good. Why? Because they don't have all these laws or license and regulations that they have to pay to be able to sell that product. So it makes it easier for them to succeed on their little business, which is good. I think it's awesome. That's why if you want to sell fruta picada, you will succeed because you don't have no overhead. You get the fruit really cheap, and you go out there and put a little table and have cups full of fruit, and you're in business. Simple as that.
Oh gosh, a big one for us is like medical. I mean, I'll say like that if there were a major illness or a major accident in our family that, we wouldn't potentially go bankrupt because healthcare there is more affordable.
Big time. That's why
Especially if
everybody
you're a
goes to Mexico to
citizen.
get their medical
Right.
situation.
So I'm in the United States, just knowing that, again, we could find ourselves under mountains of debt or, in such a poor financial situation from an accident or an illness, that's something that's on everybody's mind in the United States. So to have that stress relieved a bit in Mexico is another big factor. And same with education. I mean, the public universities in Mexico are free of cost. And if you want to go to a private university in Mexico, it's still going to be a fraction of what you're going to pay for a private university in the United States. So just knowing that, again, they're keeping it easy for people to get ahead in life and not inherently put behind with debt, is so great.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah, and again, talking about the medical, it's free for everybody, but there's kind of like a wait list. You have to wait, but there's the option of going private. It's going to cost you more money, not a lot, but you get treated right away with a lot,
You can pay for the experience, but it's still, even paying for those private services are still going to be way more affordable than what we see in the United States.
Yeah. So you got two options. For free, you have to wait in line. If you want to get treated like right away, you have to pay not that much. Now in the United States, you have to pay and you have to wait in line.
So I hope that everything we've shared now has kind of given you some background knowledge of us and kind of given you an idea of why we want to move permanently to Mexico, because we are, of course, kind of in between the two countries. We do work our full-time jobs in the United States, but we try to spend as much time as possible in Michoacan, where we built our forever home. But all of those reasons are, of course, supplemental to the fact that Marco just wants to move to his hometown, right?
Yeah, I'm really happy to be back.
Building that life there and, getting to be around his parents more, who are aging now, and just around your family, who all have their own businesses and that's just like this long time dream that is coming true now for you. Definitely, I think it does more than justify us wanting to move back, but all those other reasons are supporting the decision even further. Anyways, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us ramble and talk just very casually about it. But if you haven't subscribed already, please do. Like I said, it's been such an honor actually to listen to all of you, read your comments and hear your stories about, wanting to do the same thing or family members who are doing the same thing or whatever it may be. And I hope that our videos continue to be useful to you all in those endeavors. So thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.